We're now moving from what's probably the most intuitive inferences in propositional logic to one that might be a little bit complicated, and people have a lot more problems with that, and that is the if-then, the conditional, or the hypothetical. And remember, when we were talking about the predicate logic, we were talking about categorical propositions like all men are mortal. It said everything of the first kind is of the second kind. So if you think about it, we can say the same kind of thing with a conditional proposition or a hypothetical proposition. That is, all men are mortal. Well, we pick a particular guy. We say, if Socrates is a man, then Socrates is mortal. Right? To say all men are mortal is pick anybody. You could say kind of, if X is a man, then X is mortal. Fill in the X with anybody. And it's going to be if then. So on the condition, if Socrates is a man, then he's mortal. If hydrogen and oxygen are mixed, then water is formed. Now let me ask you about those first two. What happens if Socrates isn't a man? What does this sentence tell you? The correct response, think about it, is nothing. It just says, if Socrates is a man, he's mortal. If you find out that Socrates is a woman, doesn't tell you anything about her, even if that one is true. The second one, if hydrogen and oxygen are mixed, then water is formed. Right? It tells you if you mix the two, then water is formed. Does it tell you what happens if the two aren't mixed? No. Now, and I picked the name Ashley, by the way, in this one intentionally because Ashley is a name that applies to both men and women. If Ashley is a mother, then Ashley is a female. Now, what happens if Ashley isn't a mother? It doesn't tell you anything about whether he or she is a female or not, right? Because you could be, if you're a sister, an unwed sister, you're also a female, right? That's another true if-then statement. Think about number 4. If the president is in the White House, then he is in Washington, D.C., right? Because the White House is in Washington, D.C. But if the president is not in the White House, does it tell you that anything about whether he is or is not in Washington? No. I mean, because if he's in the Burger King on Pennsylvania Avenue next to the White House, he's still in Washington. If he's in Congress, he's still in Washington. But the one thing it does tell you is, if he's in the White House, he's in Washington. So it's not saying that either of these two sentences is true, but rather it's making a connection between the first and the second one. Between one proposition and another. It's asserting a connection, making a connection. It tells us, all the times when the first proposition is true are times when the second proposition is true. Right? It just tells every time that first proposition is true, the second proposition is true. The second proposition might very well be true on other occasions also. But it tells you if that first condition, right? That's why it's conditional. If that first condition applies, is true, then the second thing is true. Or on the hypothesis, if you're thinking hypothetically, if that first thing is true, that second thing is also true.